look at trance waves this video, and I want to start off with a comparison. If you have, for instance, a drum loop loaded up in the EPS 16 Plus and you play that drum loop on, for instance, the root key C4, it sounds fine. But when you want to adjust the tempo of the drum loop to your drum track and you play it higher up, like for instance G4 key, the sound is pitched up. So it fits the tempo of your track, but the pitch is higher. So if you cut that drum loop up in small parts, you get and you lay it out over the keyboard, you get control over the duration and the pitch of that drum loop. So a trance wave kind of works in the same way. So for instance, I have this this sample here. It's a crossfade from a square wave to a saw wave, and if I play it higher up on the keyboard, it naturally sounds pitched up. We all know that that's the thing with those samplers. So what a trance wave can do is slice this sample up in really small slices. And each slice is actually one single cycle waveform. So if we go to the edit wave page and we set the mode to loop forward, and then we set the sample loop end to 128 samples, you will hear the square wave. So what the trance wave function will do is it will scan through this wave sample one single cycle waveform at a time. So if we set up the modulation wheel as the modulator, and we scroll up and down, we scroll through the waveform. So it's giving us control over the pitch and duration of this wave sample. So I think those are the basic principles of a trance wave. Okay, the process I came up with, it consists of 3 stages, and since we're doing this completely inside the box, the first stage is to create some waveforms. So we're going to create a saw wave, a square wave, and a pulse wave. And we're going to tune them and resample them and make sure they start at a 0 crossing point. So if they all start their cycle at the beginning of the wave sample, because we make them one cycle long, so 128 samples per single cycle, all the waveforms will be in sync with each other. Then next we will cut them to the same length. Then the second stage is to create proper fade-ins and fade-outs in the wave samples, and then mix them together to a one wave sample. And then stage 3 is to set it up as a trance wave. So let's do it. Okay, like I said, we're gonna create a trance wave that's similar to the one you heard at the beginning, but we're gonna make it slightly more interesting. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a trance wave actually with 3 waveforms in it. So it starts with a saw wave, then flows into a square wave, and it flows into a pulse wave in the end. And I've just created 3 instruments three new instruments, each with one layer and one wave sample in it. So let's start with the first instrument and let's create the saw wave in there. So we're gonna move to the edit wave page. Edit wave page. Set the loop direction to loop forward, and then move to the sample loop start page. And I need to choose the wave sample, and I often forget to choose that. So, okay, the loop start, we're gonna set it to 49. The loop end, we're gonna set it to 85.82. So then we're gonna adjust the sample endpoint and the sample start point to the loop endpoint and the loop start point. We're gonna press Command amp and truncate the wave sample. So now we have a single cycle of this saw wave. So the next thing is to tune it to the correct pitch, and what I find a handy trick to do is to create another layer with another wave sample, which is a square wave, and I use that as a reference for tuning. So here you can hear that the saw wave needs to be tuned down, so that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, when you hear the waveform start phasing, then you know you're right. Then you have the right tuning. So now we can actually delete layer 2 because we don't need it anymore. Here we go. So now we have a perfectly tuned saw wave, and now we're gonna actually resample this. We're gonna resample it for half a second because we need some content in this wave sample. So we're gonna press edit wave and then resample with effect. I turn the effect off, and again I need to select the layer and the wave sample to resample. So instrument 1, layer 1, wave sample 1, that's correct. Now set the key to resample to A4 sharp, and what this will do is when we resample the A4 sharp, it will give us a single cycle of 128 samples, and this is really handy to know. This is great because this is what we can use when we set up the trans wave. So let's record it for half a second. And this is too much. No, I said half a second. Okay, let's do it like this. So it resampled, let's keep it. Let's press amp, edit amp, and set the volume to 50. And the bus to bus 1, and that's our saw wave. Now, when you resample, the instrument settings are going to be kept intact. So since we fine-tune it down, we want to reset the fine-tuning to 0. So press the up and down key at the same time. And now our saw wave is perfectly tuned with the square wave in instrument 2. And the next important thing to do is to make sure that this saw wave absolutely starts at a 0 crossing point. So I'm going to turn on the loop auto loop finding, I'm gonna move to the sample start, the loop start page, and press the up key, and there I can see that the first zero crossing point is at 179 samples. So I'm gonna set the start point of the sample at the same value, so 179, and then we're gonna truncate the wave sample. So now I know that it starts absolutely its cycle on the beginning of the wave sample. Alright, and let's give it a length of about 100 wave cycles, or single cycles, I mean. Each single cycle is 128 samples, so let's set it to 12,801. And then adjust the loop end to the sample end, and let's truncate again, and there is the first wave sample that we need for our trance wave. And so let's move on to the square wave, and let's set the sample end and the sample start points to the loop end and the loop start points first. The square wave loop starts at 32, so we're gonna adjust the sample start to 32, and then it ends at 96, so we're gonna adjust the sample end to 96 and truncate. And that's the square wave. So now we don't need to tune it, it's already tuned. So the next thing we will do is resample this. So I'm gonna press Command Wave and then scroll down to resample with effect to instrument 2 layer 1 wave sample 1. That's fine. Key to resample. Again, we're gonna resample A4 sharp for half a second. And there you go, it resampled. Let's keep it. Let's set the volume back to 50 and the output bus back to bus 1. Yeah, and I also want to make sure that this wave sample starts absolutely on a zero crossing point. So I have the auto loop finding function already on. So we're gonna go to the edit wave page and to the loop start, and we're gonna press up, and now we see that at 226 is the first zero crossing point, so we're gonna adjust the sample start point to 226 samples. Here we go, we're gonna truncate, and now we're gonna set the sample length to 12,801. So that all wave samples have the same length. Let me turn off the outer loop function, we don't need it right now. And let's truncate the wave sample again. And our square wave is done. Let's move on to the pulse wave. Instrument 3. Let's go to the edit wave page and first actually set the loop mode to loop forward, and then we move to the loop start point and set it to 0, and then move to the loop endpoint and set it to 6969. Okay, that's great. Let's set the sample start and the sample end to the loop end and the loop start. And hey, what was that? I had it set to 6969, so I gotta adjust the loop end point here. 6969, there we go. Sample end 69, yeah. Loop start 0. Let's truncate the wave sample. And there we have one single cycle of this pulse wave. And now we'll retune it, so I'm gonna create another layer and create another wave sample just for reference for tuning. Right there they are phasing, so we know we have the right pitch. So let's delete layer 2, and I gotta choose layer 2 and delete it. So now we're gonna resample the pulse wave. To instrument 3, layer 1. Alright, let's keep it and set the volume to 50, output bus back to 1, and that's fine. So let's move on and set the auto loop finding on and find the first zero crossing point by going to the loop start, and this one seems to be at 246, so let's adjust the sample start point to 246 as well. And let's truncate the wave sample. And now let's adjust the sample endpoint to 12,801. And let's truncate again. And what I forgot is to reset the fine tuning, so that's what I'm gonna do first. Awesome, we now have the saw wave, the square wave and the pulse wave. And in the next part we're gonna create fades, fade ins and fade outs in the wave samples, and we're gonna mix them together. Okay, now that we have created these waveforms, we're gonna prepare them to be used in a trance wave. So it's obvious that if you want the saw wave to flow into the square wave and then to flow into the pulse wave, that the saw wave it needs to fade out. So it starts at full volume and then it fades out, while the square wave starts at 0 and it fades in, and when it's at its peak it will fade out again to the end, while the pulse wave fades in to the end. So let's create that. We have 3 wave samples. We're going to use the full length of each wave sample. So we're going to create those fades, and what we're also going to do is clear out the data in the wave sample that we don't need. But we're going to keep the full length of the wave samples intact. So here we go. Let's start with the saw wave. And the saw wave, it needs to start at full volume and then fade out to about 50% of the wave sample. Let's press Command Amp and go to fade out and set the start address, which is 0, and then we're going to set the end address to 50, just like that. So we're going to set the scale depth to 4.5 dB, and I'm going to press enter. So now we have a wave sample that starts at full volume and then it fades and then the volume comes back up. Listen to this. That's good, so we're gonna keep it. Now at 50 the volume comes back up, but we don't need that information in the wave sample, so we're gonna clear it out. So we're gonna press Command LFO, clear data, and press yes. So then again we need to set a start address, which is 50. And then we set the end address, which is 99, the end of the wave sample. We press enter and there it's completed. So listen to this now. So there you have it. The saw wave is fading out. And let's move to the square wave, which needs to fade in at 0 to 50%, and then at 50 it needs to fade out. So let's press Command Amp and create the fade in, and the start address for the fade in is 0, the end address is 50. Scaling is 4.5 dB, and just press yes. And now we have the fade in. That's good, let's keep it, and then press Command Amp again and fade out, and the fade out starts at address 50 and end address is 99. Scaling is the same. So now it's nicely fading in and fading out. We don't need to clear any data, so let's move on to the pulse wave. And there it is. The pulse wave, it needs to fade in at 0. No, it needs to fade in at 50% till the end of the wave sample 99. So let's create that. I'm pressing Command Amp, go to fade in, set the start address to 50, set the end address to 99. The scaling is 4.5 dB, and press yes. So what you will hear now is the volume is at full, then it drops and then it comes back up. Yeah, that's good. So let's get rid of the data before 50, because we don't need anything before 50, but we keep the length of the wave sample. So press Command LFO, set the start address to 0 and set the end address to 50, and then we should have the correct pulse wave. And that's it. Again. Cool. Now that we've created all the fade ins and fade outs, we can mix them together, and I'm gonna use instrument 2 for that. And I'm gonna copy both the other layers to instrument 2. So let's start with the saw wave. Let's copy the layer to instrument 2, and this is how they sound together. So yeah, you get the idea. This is going well. So let's now mix those layers together, those wave samples. So I'm gonna press Command Amp again and scroll up to mix wave samples. Are samples layered? Yes, they are. And we're gonna work in instrument 2. We're gonna go from layer 2, wave sample 2, 2, instrument 2, layer 1. Oh, I cancelled the command. Hold on. Mix wave samples. Are they layered? Yes. From instrument 2, layer 2, wave sample 2, to instrument 2, layer 1, wave sample 1. And you can convert the source pitch or the destination pitch. It doesn't really matter to me. I use source always. So if you want, you can set the volume balance, but it's fine. Need to do nothing about it. So press enter. Here we go. Keep the new one, and we can now get rid of layer 2. So no layer 2. Yeah, that's it. Cool. That sounds good. Let's copy the other layer, the pulse wave. So copy layer to instrument 2. Yes, here we go. And that's how those all sound together. Now we need to mix the pulse wave with the saw wave square wave. So we're gonna repeat the process. We're gonna go from instrument 2, a layer 2, a wave sample 2, to instrument 2, layer 1, a wave sample 1, convert source pitch, hit enter, and that's how it's gonna sound like. And let's delete layer 2 again. Yep. Now this sounds really low in volume, so I'm gonna normalize the wave sample first, and I have to select it. So now we have this sample ready to use. Cool, so let's move to the next part and make it into a trance wave. Good, let's try it out and see if it worked. I'm just gonna delete instrument 1 and instrument 3. There's no use for them anymore. So let's keep instrument 2. And let's set it up. So let's move to the edit wave page and set the loop mode to loop forward. So now you hear the whole of the wave sample, the complete wave sample loop. So that's not what we want. So the sample length is now 12,800. And we're gonna turn off the auto loop finding. We don't need it right now. So let's find the 128 loop point. There's our saw wave, right at the beginning of our wave sample. And that sounds good. Let's move to the next page, which is the modulation page, and set it to trance wave. And again, what the trance wave does, it's keeping the loop length intact, and it moves it through each step of the wave sample by one single cycle at a time, because we set it up at 128 samples. So I'm using the wheel as the modulator, and the wheel is still routed to the LFO amount, so I'm gonna set that to 0, so no vibrato on the wheel right now. I turn the wheel in the up position, so listen to this. With the mod amount, I can now scroll through the wave sample. And as you can hear, we scroll pretty flawless through the wave sample, and there's no difference in sound at around 79 or 80, so I'm gonna set it to 80. And I think we did a pretty good job on that trance wave. It sounds really smooth, so I'll play it for a little bit. And there, right in the middle, you can hear the square wave, just how we programmed it. And there's our saw wave right at the beginning, and of course the pulse wave at the end of the wave sample. So that's how you make a smooth trance wave completely inside the box. It's one way, it's not the only way. I'm not gonna go into modulating right now. I'll save that for another video, as well as some other tips and tricks. So stay tuned, we'll continue this.